Greetings, seniors and parents. This is Heidi Godow, the Director of Guidance at Paramus Catholic High School. The following program is presented by Ed Zamora, who has been in the world of financial aid for over 24 years. He's worked at private colleges and has amassed a ton of knowledge on the process of paying for college. This presentation will cover the financial aid process and some important items to consider when applying to college during the pandemic. Some of the topics will include new changes to the financial aid process, how divorce and being remarried can affect aid, the effect of multiple students in college at the same time, changes to the federal loans, state financial aid changes, the impact of early decision and early action on financial aid, and some new deadlines for the college process. So without further ado, let's get started.
Now, once again, my name is Ed Zamora, and today we're going to be going over the college aid process essentially in 2020 with everything going on. Now, occasionally I will be dropping down the slides to see if you guys throw a lot of questions at me at once. I have to kind of take down the slides for a minute and go through the Q&A and see what's going on. But other than that, we will talk about today's presentation, the financial aid and admissions landscapes as far as what's going on now. We're going to talk about the SAT, ACT optional scenarios, not just on the admission side, but also on the financial aid side. We're going to talk about the college list from the safety, target, and reach perspective, not just from the admission side, but also from the financial aid side, kind of how it's looked upon from a financial aid point of view, your college list. We're also going to be discussing appealing colleges, asking for more aid. I will also be discussing if you had a job loss, foreclosure, bankruptcy, if you've been affected financially, essentially, between 2019 to 2020 tax year, obviously with everything going on this year. I will obviously be discussing the financial aid forms, the FAFSA, the CSS Profile, the state forms as well as the different scams out there I've seen. There's been a lot of scams this year, unfortunately, and a lot of frauds that's been popping up. That usually happens when we have economic situations like we do now, as well as the loan resources and other financial aid resources to help you guys out throughout the process. Now, that being said, let's start off by talking about the YouTube channel. Now, the guidance office has been asking me probably 7 or 8 years now, if I could record the presentations. And by the way, we are recording today's presentation. Also, we can put this stuff on YouTube. I've been asked for this by every guidance office I help out, and I help out about 80 of them. So for years and years and years, I've been telling them, yes, we're going to do it. Yes, we're going to do it. And finally, we got around to it. So we finally done the YouTube channel. If you want more college content, if you're looking for more help, we do have on YouTube a lot of videos. I think we're up to almost 40 videos now about the college process, about work study, about student loans, about gap years. I talk about scholarship searches. I talk about grants. I talk about community college. I talk about everything on here. We just posted a video today, actually about 2 hours ago, about early decision and early action and how it affects your financial aid. So if you want to watch the early action, early decision, if you're going to be doing those things, you want to see how it affects your financial aid, very simple. Just go to the YouTube channel. We just loaded the video up about 2 hours ago. As well as if you want additional content, just go on YouTube, subscribe. It basically notifies you. I think we do a video now basically once every week. Before we were doing 2 to 3 videos a week because I had more time before the school started. So if you go on there, there's a lot of good information about the college process. That being said, you go on there, you just look my name up, Ed Zamora. You'll find the channel. It's fairly simple from that point on to kind of find the different videos we have. That being said, let's start the video by talking about essentially the differences in the student body out there and everything that's going on. Now, in the world of college, i.e. you guys and students in college already, there's basically 3 different types of students right now that are in this whole pandemic situation as far as a student is concerned. The worst group of students right now are the students who graduated. Because the students who graduated in May graduated into one of the worst economic unemployment rates that this country or any, I guess, country has ever seen, really, or any one of us have actually seen in this country. So number one worst scenario to be in is a student who's graduated going into a very difficult unemployment situation. Second reason that it's difficult for them is after December, so basically in 2 months, these students must start paying back their student loans, whether they were in forbearance because they had it based on the terms they elected before the pandemic happened, or whether they were in forbearance because of the federal government's assistance. Either way, these students are going to go back into repayment in about 2 months. So very difficult job scenario, as well as having to go back into repaying back loans. Second worst group of the students out there are the students who've gone back to college, mainly because they're going back to a college scenario they've never experienced before. They have campuses that have dorm rooms are being quarantined. They have campuses that have basically kicked every student off the campus because there have been outbreaks that go virtual. They have no clubs, no sports, no social activities. There's no partying. There's no having a certain amount of people or a certain amount of people coming in from anywhere outside the college. So it's a difficult environment to be a college student right now. And then you have the third group, which is you guys on the call here tonight. Now, you guys are, for me, in the best possible student group of all. The first reason being, is the SAT, ACT optional scenario that's popped up. So a lot of families, unfortunately, and a lot of students in the past have had the issue of dealing with essentially the barrier of entry to college, the SAT, ACT. So they've done well academically, they've taken hard courses, but they can't score well on the test for whatever reason. That being said, that barrier is now being eliminated for pretty much every college. So that's a huge benefit for a lot of students now. Second big benefit is if you're competing or you're looking at very competitive colleges right off the bat, early decision pool will probably be very light this year, mainly because students have never seen these colleges, or a lot of them have not seen these colleges. So the likelihood of them doing early decision is very unlikely. Second, international students, which at some of the top competitive colleges bring in anywhere from 5, 10, 15% of their incoming freshman class. These students are not going to be competing for spots because many of them are not going to be going to come here with everything going on with the pandemic. So good, bad, and indifferent, senior students and junior parent students are in the best case scenario right now. Now for junior parents, I would definitely be putting together a list of schools and looking to see what we like, what we don't like with everything going on. Now explain to juniors and below the things I would be doing right now going forward throughout this entire process from admissions and financial aid process, essentially. That being said, let's talk about the one question I get from almost every family about the Common Application. And by the way, for those who know what the Common App is, the Common App is essentially one form where students fill out this single form that goes out to a bunch of different colleges. Many of the schools your students are considering going to utilize the Common App. On the screen here, you see a snapshot of the Common Application. Now on the Common Application, there's now a standard question that's asked by every single college. And I actually highlighted it all the way at the bottom. It says, do you intend to apply for need-based financial aid? And almost every parent asks me, why is the admissions office, their form, asking us if we're applying for financial aid assistance? Well, what used to happen is if you got this question on any admissions form, it basically meant the college was looking at you from a financial perspective to see if you could afford to pay for the college or enough for the college in their eyes to not have it used against you for admissions. Now, since they made this question standard, no one really knows which of these colleges are looking at you from a financial point of view and which ones are not looking at you from a financial point of view as far as acceptance. Now, the easiest way to kind of get more information on that is, number one, call the admissions office. You're calling the admissions office and you're asking them, is your school need aware? Essentially what used to be known as need blind. If they indicate they are looking at you from a financial point of view, that means that yes, it is part of the criteria of being accepted. Now, it's not the end-all be-all. And this is what I mean, it's not the end-all be-all. It basically works this way when it comes to the financial consideration, if the school is looking at you from a financial point of view for admissions. Typically, let's say that we're down to the last spots. Let's say we have 30 spots left in all the admissions pool for that college. That's all that's left. We can fill in 30 spots left, that's it. And let's say we have 100 students left to fill those 30 spots. The 100 top students we like that we're going to consider. The first thing they're going to consider, based on that, very little spots available, is who can afford it. So who's indicated they don't want financial need. Those are the students who are going to be taking the spots first. Then whatever's left over will go to the other students. Now, that being said, for me, broadly speaking, I always tell students and parents, if you need financial assistance, then always check off yes. The reason you always check off yes is because after you go through this presentation tonight, you're going to be able to realize whether or not you have financial aid space. And if you do have financial aid space and you need assistance, you want to notify the school by saying, yes, we would like financial aid consideration. That being said, let's talk about building the college list. Now, when you're building the college list, there's basically 3 different parts to the college list. Pretty much every student's list is the same. You have the safety schools, which are basically the guaranteed ins, okay? Then you have the target schools, which is like the next level, which are like the 50-50 chances of getting in. So the likely schools of getting accepted to, but not guaranteed. Then you have the top tier schools, the reach schools, I guess the dream colleges, which in some cases require more work or higher test scores, more essays, interviews, this kind of stuff. These colleges are typically the more difficult ones to get accepted to. That being said, that's the admissions way of looking at building a college list. And by the way, this year, More than likely, more students will have bigger college lists because a lot of students have not seen a lot of these colleges. So they're going to be sending out applications left and right, seeing where they get accepted to, and then hoping that they can go visit the school in the late winter, early spring. That being said, that's the admission side. From a financial aid point of view, it's a little bit different in the sense that for most students, their list, they're really looking to get into their target and reach colleges. This is where they want to go. It's highly unlikely, it's very rare, let me put it that way, that students end up going to their safety schools. That being said, from a financial aid perspective, the safety schools are key. And this is why the safety schools are key when you're putting together a list from a financial aid point of view. Since your student is basically a guaranteed in, that means that school is going to want to more than likely entice your student to go there by offering them scholarship funding. Now, your goal right off the bat is once you have the students list and you know what schools are applying to, right off the bat, your goal is to automatically, call every safety school. I'd also call every target and reach school, by the way, but safety schools are the key. Call every safety school and ask them, does your school offer scholarship funding? And if they say yes, ask to speak to an admissions counselor. If they can't do one then, ask if they can get a meeting with them. Sometimes they do meetings over the phones. Now they're doing meetings obviously with Zoom like we're doing here tonight. The reason you want to talk to an admissions counselor is right off the bat, what you want to find out is if the school offers scholarship money, does they offer scholarship money to our students? And what you can ask the admissions officer is very simple. My student has X, Y, and Z GPA. My student was able to take the SATs and has X, Y, and Z score. What will happen is that admissions officer will take these two items, link them up, because they always typically have, at most colleges, a grid that shows them based on test scores and GPA, what scholarship money is available for this type of student. If you don't have your SAT score, then obviously just give them the courses you're taking, as well as the GPA your student has, and then ask them based on this, will we be scholarship eligible? If they say they are scholarship eligible, the next question you automatically ask the admissions officer is, what's the next level? You want to find out what the next level is of scholarship money and if it's attainable. Such as if they say, okay, your student's, let's say, at a 3.2 GPA, so they're eligible for an $8,000 to $10,000 scholarship. The next level is going to be, let's say, a 3.5. It may be out of reach, but it may not be out of reach. Now, for next question I would ask is, if we're that close, if we do well senior year, could we be pushed into the higher level? Your goal is always to maximize scholarship money. Main reason is because scholarship money is basically the golden ticket of financial aid because it's guaranteed for 4 years. Also, when you're dealing with scholarship money, you always contact the admissions office. And the reason you contact the admissions office is because in the world of college, the financial part, the admissions offices handle all scholarship money. The financial aid offices handle all grant money. This is very important to realize, and I'll be explaining it a couple times throughout the presentation, but these are the two key components you have to understand. Because what you want to do is when you maximize your safety school scholarship money, you can use that money to negotiate, to leverage the target and reach colleges to try to give you more money. That's the key for safety school from a financial point of view, because most students don't end up going to their safety schools. So you should use them as bargaining chips to try to get more money out of the other colleges your students are more likely or more wanting to go to type scenario. That being said, let's talk about probably the main reason students are falling into, or I guess, garnering more and more debt every year and graduating with just huge sums of student loan debts, unfortunately. On this slide here, in this chart here, you're going to be basically explained why there's more and more student loans out there than ever before. Now, right off the bat, one of the biggest situations that's happening, it's been happening over the last 5 to 8 years now, is that students are taking 5, in some cases, 6 years now to graduate 4-year programs. It's been basically proven, because they do studies on all this stuff, that anywhere between 30 to 50% of students are taking longer than 4 years to graduate 4-year programs. Whether it's 4.5, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it may be, this is the biggest problem with that. In the world of college, there is no such thing as a 5-year scholarship for a 4-year program. It does not exist. There is no such thing as a 6-year grant for a 4-year program. So if you go into an extra semester, an extra year after the 4th year, any money that you need to pay will have to come out of pocket, or you must take on more loan debt. This is where the loan debt keeps growing for students. Now, line number 1 is a line you all need to write down because it's highly important you understand this. Your student will need to accomplish roughly around 120 college credits. Very important they do that. At 120 and above, that's when they get to graduate, whether it takes them 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. The college doesn't care. As long as they're progressing, the college will keep coming back. Line number 2 is where this problem is persisting. And this is what I mean by persisting. And also write this down too. Every college, every university that has a tuition bill, whatever your tuition bill is, you're paying that amount as long as your student's taking 12 to 18 college credits. Just write that down. We pay the same amount of money in the fall and the spring in the bills if my student takes 12 to 18 college credits. The problem becomes when students start college, they always start with 12 to 13 college credits. Not because the college wants to keep them there longer. That's not their goal. They start them with 12 to 13, which is the bare minimum of full-time status, because they want to ease them into the process, not overwhelm them. The problem becomes when a student keeps taking 12 credits every semester. End of line number 2, if your student does this over 4 years, they've only accomplished 96 college credits. They're 30 credits short of graduating on time, i.e. 5th year, 6th year, etc. Line number 3 is what you're trying to get accomplished. Line number 3 basically means your student averages 15 college credits per semester. If they average 15 college credits per semester, at the end of the 4th year, they have 120 credits. They're in line to graduate on time. So how do we make sure line 3 happens and not line number 2? Very simple. To line 3 to happen, you should all write this down. In the billing, records, and bursar's office, sometimes it's the same office, by the way, in some colleges, they have what's known as a FERPA form. F-E-R-P-A. Very important to write this down. F-E-R-P-A. The FERPA form allows your student to grant access to any way they want to for any and all of their academic and financial information at the college. So what does that mean? Very simple. You can call, as long as your students put your name on their FERPA, you can call their academic advisor, the person that keeps track of what they're doing, make sure they're on track to graduate, make sure they're taking the right courses. You can call their academic advisor and ask them, how many college credits do we have? How many college credits are we signed up for? What's my student's GPA? Is my student even going to class? These are the questions you can ask them if the FERPA form is on file. If the FERPA form is not on file, they can't legally answer any of your questions, even if you're the one paying the bill. It doesn't matter. So the FERPA is key to get them in and out on time. And it also gives you peace of mind because your student can tell you literally nothing for 4 years and you could know absolutely everything that's going on, essentially from at least an academic point of view. Let's put it that way. Okay? That's why the form is such a key component to have. That being said, let's talk about the SAT, ACT optional. Now, when it comes to SAT, ACT optional, for seniors, juniors, and everyone on the call here tonight, here is where you guys need to go, this website right here. Great resource. It's called fairtest.org. On fairtest.org, at the bottom, they have the specific link, or I guess we just put the specific link, fairtest.org/university/optional. Here is where you can find every SAT optional college, SAT, ACT optional college out there. Now, the interesting thing is, before March, before I guess everything kind of just, went south, let's put it that way, there was actually 1,000 SAT, ACT optional colleges. So it's not like the colleges had a few SAT, ACT optional colleges and then everyone just went SAT optional. It's not the way it really worked. So the reality went from 1,000 to roughly around 1,600. So yes, there was a huge jump, but there was already a ton of schools on there already. Now, the interesting thing is for senior parents, if you're on here and you're looking for schools that are SAT, ACT optional, right off the bat, what I would be looking for is I'm looking to do SAT, ACT optional as a senior parent or senior student, I guess. First place I'm calling is the admissions office. And I'm asking them, if we go SAT, ACT optional, will this be used against us for scholarship consideration? Because obviously you want to know this information. Now, in March, before all this went crazy and we had 1,000 schools already on there, 9 out of 10 schools did not use this against you for scholarship consideration. Okay, so there was a big number before. Now the number is probably going to drop. Maybe 7 out of 10 schools, probably 8 out of 10 schools will not use it against you for scholarship consideration. But does not mean that there's not going to be that 1 or 2 schools in there that your student has on their list, unfortunately, that needs test scores for scholarship consideration. But it's best to know that up front by asking the admissions office. For juniors and below, as I'm putting together my college list, essentially now, what I would be doing is contacting each one of these colleges and asking them, I see that you're SAT, ACT optional. Will you continue being SAT, ACT optional next year or the year after? And the main reason I'm asking is because while it's highly unlikely that Harvard's going to stay SAT, ACT optional, it's also not out of the realm of possibility. Because of the fact that before this all happened, George Washington, American, Wake Forest, I mean, you had name brand schools on here that were SAT, ACT optional. So while it's going to be difficult for them to do that and possibly not going to happen, as a junior, I'd like to know this. And also, the biggest university system in the world, California, went SAT, ACT optional forever. So it's not unlikely that higher level schools will also go in this direction. BU was actually going in this direction too before the whole pandemic hit, as far as going SAT, ACT optional as well. So you never really know who's going to stay on and who's not. That being said, let's talk about sticker price. 1 second here, just have a quick question that just popped up from a parent here about SATs. I knew this question was going to pop up. The question is, will submitting SATs give you an advantage or disadvantage? And a lot of your questions, if you've been to my presentations before, you know I say a lot of your questions are yes and no. And this is what I mean by yes and no. Let me give you an example on the high end, Harvard. If you're applying to Harvard and you send SAT scores in and your SAT scores are, let's say, 1450, you're essentially 72 points lower than Harvard's average, because Harvard's average is 1522, which doesn't actually exist. I know someone's going to type in, there is no single digits. I know it doesn't exist, but that's their average. So Harvard's SAT score at 1522, basically what would happen is the admissions officer would see, okay, they sent the test scores in, but they're below what we would even consider as far as high score, I guess you can call it. So they won't even consider it. But then there's the other camp of thinking of SAT scores, which is something I kind of think of as well, where you haven't a human being looking at your application. So unless my SAT score is higher than the score's median average, I'm not sending my scores in. Because as a human being, maybe you're having a bad day, maybe you've seen a whole bunch of 1400s and 1500s, and all of a sudden some student sends it to 1350, and even though academically they're extremely strong, that 1350 might stay in the back of my mind, and I might just reject the kid, only because of the fact that they sent it in, even though they may have checked off SAT, ACT optional. So it's school specific, I guess, if you're sending test scores in. Hope that answers your question, because a lot of your questions, good, bad, and different, are broad. So I try to give you guys a broad answer, okay? That being said, let's talk about college cost. When it comes to college cost, let's talk public schools first, state schools. Nationwide, the average is $14,000 to $30,000. Problem is, here in the tri-state area, we cost between $18,000 to $40,000 for a public school, a state school, like a Rutgers. Making matters worse, our private universities are also more expensive than the national average. Our private universities start at $40,000 and go all the way to $60,000. And then when you start talking about the expensive schools, or I guess the more, elite, the private universities, $70,000 is the new starting average for higher level colleges. In fact, as you see here on the screen, Columbia costs $82 plus. Fairleigh Dickinson, where I was one of the financial aid directors, costs almost $65,000 now. So the prices have gotten very high. Now, the interesting thing is, I have one parent asking about this question as well, so I might as well bring it up. What I thought would happen this year in February, March, and April was, especially when the pandemic started taking hold and universities started sending students home and everything else, I was under the assumption that more than likely, and yes, by the way, this is 1 year cost, everything included. I was under the assumption that colleges were going to start dropping prices, maybe not across the board, but at least a significant amount of colleges would start dropping prices. What actually happened was a handful of schools dropped the price like 5%. A handful of schools stayed at the same price they were the year before. And then about 95% of schools elected to go up in price anywhere from 5 to 10%. Now, for those who are new to this program and haven't seen me speak before, you now will know that the average increase in school price is typically 3 to 5% on the high end, not 5 to 10%. So majority of schools actually jacked up the price anywhere from 2 to 3 times the national average increase per year. So they went up super high. So that being said, the one error I see from the admission side every year, and it happens every year for 23 years on the admission side, as far as selecting colleges, it's always the same. You never look at the sticker price and elect to apply to a college or not to apply. Main reason being, the schools you see on the list here, half the students, actually more than half the students that attend these colleges pay less than half the sticker price. So never look at the sticker price and assume you can't afford it. It's the worst mistake you can make from an admissions point of view. What you need to do is the homework. And here is where we start talking about how to do the homework. And this is what I mean by the homework. Sorry guys, 1 second. My wife just locked herself out of the house. Sorry guys, I guess it's the Zoom nation. So this is my wife who just locked herself out of the house, and this is our 3-month-old. Say hello, buddy. Okay. Sorry guys, I didn't realize my wife left the door locked when she left a minute ago. That being said, let's get back to the presentation. In the world of financial aid, what most families don't realize, as far as the homework is concerned, let me start with that, is how financial aid actually works. And this is what I mean by how financial aid actually works. The first thing that almost every family new to the college process gets wrong or is ill-informed on, let me start with that, is understanding what the actual term financial aid means. Now, in the world of college, financial aid means 4 things. It means scholarships, grants, loans, and work programs. What that basically means is, if you're talking to a financial aid officer, if you're talking to an admissions officer, and you say to them, or the topic of financial aid comes up, let's call it that, and you keep asking them questions about, can we get financial aid? Does your school provide financial aid? They're all going to say yes. And the reason they're all going to say yes, right off the bat, is because financial aid also means loans and work programs, as well as free money like grants and scholarships. Because financial aid is 4 parts: scholarships and grants, the free money. If you only want to talk about free money with anyone from the college, you have to use the term gift aid. Write that down. It's a very important term. It's going to come up a bunch of times in today's presentation. Gift aid is the financial aid term that means just scholarships and grants. The other part of financial aid is loans and work programs. So if you are not specific with the person you're talking to, as you keep talking about financial assistance, they're going to keep hearing, we need loan help. Can we get loans? To get loans in college, you basically just need to be breathing. That's the simple fact. It's just you breathing, you do a financial aid forms, you're going to get loan money. It's just that simple. So to talk about just the free money, talk about gift aid. That's what you need to discuss. Okay. And once again, scholarship money is handled by admissions, grant money is handled by the financial aid office. That being said, let's talk about how a college determines if you are eligible for grant money, the financial aid component, the financial aid office's component of free money. Right off the bat, there's 2 components right here you need to go through, or I guess write down, that you'll be using these terms going forward. The first term is called cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is a very important term you need to be using going forward throughout your entire process of college. The second important term is called the expected family contribution. The cost of attendance is what the school costs 1 year, everything. I'll show you goes in that in the next slide. Subtract out what's called the expected family contribution, or essentially what they think you can pay towards 1 year of college education. What's left over is the financial need. The financial need is what the school should help you out with in scholarships, grants, loans, and work programs. I say should because there's no law or rule saying they have to help you out at all. I want to show you 2 ways tonight to figure out if your colleges are generous or not. First, let's talk about what is cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is essentially the entire cost for that year, for that one student. It's the tuition, it's the room and board, it's the books, it's transportation, it's lab fees, technology fees, insurance fees, parking fees, new student fees. All these different fees incorporate the cost of attendance. Now, there's 2 reasons why you need to go forward using the cost of attendance term. Number 1 reason is because you want to know right off the bat how much the whole school costs, not just what we're paying you, but how much am I going to come out of pocket for dropping my student off, for putting together the dorm room, for the laptop, for the insurance. I want to know everything. That's the first reason you want to know what the cost of attendance is and use that term. Second reason you want to use the cost of attendance term and understand the amount of that school's cost of attendance is if you're negotiating. Because if you're negotiating, you don't want to negotiate tuition and room and board. You want to negotiate the cost of attendance, everything. I want to negotiate the books, the insurance. I want to negotiate the lab fees. I want to negotiate the whole package, not a portion of the package. That being said, let's talk about how they come up with your expected family contribution, or essentially what they think you can pay towards the cost of education. Now, right off the bat, there's 2 financial aid forms you'll be filling out. There's technically a third, which is the state form, but I really don't count it as a third form because it's attached to the FAFSA form, so it's kind of the same thing to me. But right off the bat, senior parents are the only ones filling out forms this year, by the way. Juniors and below, you guys aren't filling out a single form. It's only senior parents. These are the only people filling out forms. And for senior parents, all financial aid forms require you to fill them out using 2019 taxes, okay? Now for senior parents, you will all fill out the form on the left called the FAFSA form. Some of you will fill out the form on the right called the CSS Profile form. Now, no matter what your accountant says, your financial planner, the college advisor person, your uncle, your aunt, the neighbor, your brother-in-law, you always fill out the FAFSA. Even if they say to you, you're not going to get anything. Even if they're right and they say you're not going to get anything, you still fill out the FAFSA form. It's very important. I have a video on YouTube. It's 7 minutes long. I'm not going to get into it now, but there's about 7 different reasons why you fill out the FAFSA, no matter what. Now, I've been doing this 23 years. I have easily met 200,000 families. And I'm not even exaggerating. 200,000 easily between the colleges I worked at, the 80 plus high schools I do every year I do presentations at. And I have told maybe 7 families, I mean maybe 7 families, out of 200,000 people probably, if not more, not to do the FAFSA for very unique, specific reasons for 1 year only. So everyone does the FAFSA no matter what. Think of it as an insurance policy. If you don't understand what I mean, just watch the video, or else I'll keep you guys here a lot longer than everybody wants to be. Just go on YouTube, watch the video about why you always fill out the FAFSA. That being said, let's talk about the FAFSA form, where you fill out the FAFSA form to begin with. For senior parents, once again, you use 2019 taxes and you fill out the form on this website here. It's called FAFSA.ed.gov. At the bottom of the screen here, you see the website where you need to go to start filling out the form. For senior parents, you have between October 1st is when the form became available, okay? Between October 1st to January 1st, this is your time frame to fill out the form. October 1st, January 1st, that entire time. You will get, by the way, the same amount of money. If you're doing this form between October 1st and January 1st, the same amount of money, no matter what day you fill it out. The day you fill it out does not make a difference as far as how much money you're gonna get. There's no such thing as first come, first serve. It never actually was a thing to begin with. In 23 years of doing this, it's never been real for my entire 23-year career. So if you do this in October, November, December, you get the same amount of money. The only time you do this form early is if you're doing early decision. If you're doing early decision, then you have to do this form typically by the early decision deadline, which is typically November 1st. So yes, you're doing it a lot quicker. Now for those doing early action, whether you're doing early action 1, early action 2, or restricted early action. So the first thing is October 1st to January 1st, you guys are the regular and rolling applications, okay? The second group, the group that has to get this in typically by November 1st, that's the early decision 1 students. The rest of the groups, the early action 1, the early decision 2, the early action 2s, as well as the restricted early actions, also known as the first choice schools, you guys have to get everything in by November 15th, okay? So an easy rule of thumb is this. If you're not doing early decision, get everything in by November 15th, the easiest way to put it. Now you're probably wondering, well, Ed, you just told us January 1st. Starting about a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago now, schools started aggressively moving up their application deadlines for admission, for financial aid. In 23 years of me doing this, I have never seen this many colleges using the early action applicants and telling them January 1st is no longer our deadline. It's now November 15th. And there's only one reason colleges move up deadlines by 2 months. And essentially it's so parents miss the deadline and miss out on financial aid. That's just the God honest truth. There's no other reason why any financial aid office moving up a date by a month and a half to 2 months in any way benefits the family. It has no benefit on the family. It has multiple benefits for the school, because if you're late by a day, a week, or a month, it typically means they can reduce the amount of aid they provide you. So unless you're doing regular or rolling, get all applications in by November 15th. And you'll understand why. I'm going to show you guys a bunch of different warnings that have been coming out from the universities. That being said, when it comes to the FAFSA form, for seniors, you're going to need 2 logins. The first login will be used to sign in as the student. The second login is the parent login, which will be used to do what's known as the iris retrieval. On the screen here, you see at the bottom of the screen a website, fsaid.ed.gov. That's where you go as a senior parent to get to create the FSA ID for the student and the FSA ID for the parent. You need 2 IDs. The 2 IDs work this way. The student ID logs you into the FAFSA to allow you to start the FAFSA. The second ID allows you to sign as the parent halfway through the FAFSA. Now, I actually created a step-by-step guide on the YouTube channel. Right there you see on the screen the actual video. It's a step-by-step guide to obtaining your FSA IDs. If you just watch the video, it's like 7 minutes long. It's very quick. You can literally put the video on one side and I'll walk you through getting your FSA ID, but you need 2 of them. Now, halfway through the FAFSA, you'll log in as the parent and you'll see this. At the bottom of the slide here, you'll see it allows you to link your taxes directly from the IRS. That is why you need the 2 logins. The 2 logins also work at the end of the FAFSA to sign your form, but you can't upload your taxes unless you have the 2 IDs, and you can't sign the FAFSA also if you don't have the 2 IDs. So you need 2 IDs, student and parent. That being said, let's talk about what counts and what doesn't count on the FAFSA. Just give me 1 second here. A bunch of questions just popped up. Let me just lower the screen here so I can see what you guys are asking. Okay. Good question. Typically, what type or what amount of financial aid is covered by work study? Work study funds are typically anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. It's rare that schools give out more than $2,000 of work study, by the way. If they do, it's actually not a benefit, it's actually a negative because they're using the work study money, that money you must be working towards, as basically covering a portion of your financial aid. So anytime I see a school give more than $2,000, it to me indicates the school is finding loopholes to not give you more financial aid of the free stuff because they're covering you with work programs and loans rather than covering us with grant money or scholarships, okay? I will be discussing, by the way, guys, multiple students in school as well as the divorce. I will be discussing that. Those are questions that always pop up, so I'll just address that right now. Now let's go back to the presentation. Now, when it comes to the FAFSA, let's start off with what doesn't count. Right off the bat, your primary home where you live does not count on the FAFSA form. That's number 1. Number 2 thing that does not count on the FAFSA form that parents put on all the time, like the home value, unfortunately, where you live, is the retirement assets. Retirement assets do not go on the FAFSA form. There is one question on the FAFSA form about retirement assets, and this is where I guess the question gets, misinterpreted or incorrectly read. The question on the FAFSA form is not asking you how much you have in retirement. The question on the FAFSA form is asking you how much you contributed to your retirement. So if you put in, let's say, $1,000 last year into your retirement, that's what you tell the FAFSA. You do not tell the FAFSA what's in your retirement account at all. They want to know what you put into the retirement account for one tax year, the previous tax year, by the way. That being said, what does go on the FAFSA is cash, savings, investments outside of retirement. Second, property valuations go on there as well. College savings accounts go on the FAFSA as well. And starting now, starting last year, all college savings accounts now go in the parent's name. You'll understand how that affects you in a moment because I'm going to go through the equation of how the FAFSA works in a moment. That being said, when you're doing the assets, everyone always asks, when do they want to know the asset valuation? The assets, as far as cash, savings, investments, etc., are all put on the form as of the day that you fill out the form. So whatever your stock is worth the day you fill it out, that's the valuation you use. Whatever you have in your checking account, that's what you put on the FAFSA form for that day's value, okay? That being said, let's talk about the expected family contribution. What you see on the screen here is the actual breakdown of the 4 parts of how they can basically put together the amount you are supposed to pay towards college for one student going off to college, the expected family contribution number. This here, I'm going to go through each component. This is called a simplified version of it. You don't have to write this all down, obviously, because we're being recorded here, so you can watch this anytime you want. But I'm also going to give you a website where you can go at the end of this slide here and basically calculate your number for free, and it's easier to do than following me here and try and do your own. I just go through this, you understand how the equation works. Part number 1, from the bottom and working our way up, student assets. Students are giving no asset protection, which means any money in their name, right off the bat, 20% of it they want to go towards college automatically. So if your student has $1,000 in their name, you put on the form, $200 of that is part 1 of the 4-part equation. Part 2, students' income. Students are allowed to make up to $6,500 before $1 counts. $1 over $6,500, they want 50 cents of every dollar. So if your student had worked in 2019, you can also do the retrieval and it'll upload it for you. Or if you manually put it into the FAFSA, any money above $6,500, just assume right off the bat, they're going to take half of it to be added into what they think you can be able to pay for college. Part number 3, parents' assets. When it comes to parents' assets, you guys are given what's known as an asset protection allowance. And just write that down. As parents, we have an asset protection allowance. The asset protection allowance you have is roughly $25,000. Just write that down. We have $25,000 of asset protection. What that means is this. Let's say all the money outside of retirement, because remember, retirement doesn't count, your primary home does not count. Let's say all the money outside of that is $20,000 in AT&T stock, or CD, or bond, or money in a checking account. If you put that $20,000 on the FAFSA does not count that money at all because you're under the $25,000 of asset protection. Let's say you have $100,000. What will happen is the FAFSA will back out $25,000, the $75,000 remaining, it will assess at a rate of 5.6%. So you start thinking, the student's money counts at 20%, the parent's money counts at 5.6%. Things you might want to do before you fill out financial aid forms. The fourth part is the parent's income. It's a sliding scale. So the more you make, the more they expect you to pay towards the cost of education. The way it works is this, because you might be looking on there, are we supposed to pay 20% of our income, 40% of our income? How does it work? This is the way it works. And right off the bat, by the way, when they ask you for income, they're asking for adjusted gross income line 8B on your 1040. That being said, let's say that your adjusted gross is $50,000 to $200,000, that range. What they're going to ask you to do is pay roughly 22% of that income towards the college cost. So if you're making $100,000, you're paying $22,000. If you're making $200,000, you're paying $44,000. And that's how they come up with the expected family contribution. Now, once you get over the 200, that amount then starts ratcheting up the percentages to the 25s, the 30s, the 40s, etc. Add these 4 components together, and that's the amount they expect you can pay towards college. This is another thing that families get incorrect most of the time, unfortunately. The expected family contribution, the amount they tell you can pay towards college based on the financial aid forms, is not the only thing you're paying at some colleges. This, in some cases, is the starting point of the minimum you're paying at some colleges. That's the way to look at it. That being said, instead of writing this all down or kind of trying to jot down and figure out yourself with an Excel sheet and everything else, the easiest thing to do is go on to College Board. On College Board, they have an EFC calculator. The calculator lets you play around the numbers. So, what if we make more next year? What if we show less savings? What if a student shows no savings? These are the kind of things you can do and figure out what's your best case scenario before you fill out any forms. That being said, let's start talking about what happens at the end of the FAFSA form after you complete all this and the formula is done for you by a giant computer. What happens is on the confirmation screen, you're going to see this. This is basically the state of New Jersey. On the confirmation screen for the FAFSA, the state of New Jersey, down there, basically halfway down your page, there'll be 2 blue boxes. The blue box on the left will say the state of New Jersey, or essentially the state application that you are residing in, requires that you fill out additional questions, for financial aid consideration. Now, when it comes to the state of New Jersey requires you click that blue box there. Many of you are not going to answer any more questions. You're just going to get a confirmation screen saying the state of New Jersey now has your information because the state of New Jersey has eliminated a lot of their questions, which means if you're looking to stay in the state of New Jersey, even if your student has no intention of staying in the state of New Jersey and they'll basically not stay here no matter what happens, still fill out the state form, okay? Because what most families don't realize as well is there's 3 people giving you financial assistance. The first is the college, then the state that you reside in if you stay within the state, then the third is the federal government. Now, all 3 of them, in many cases, just use a FAFSA and you're done. The states, however, require the FAFSA and the state form, i.e. this here. So just click the box, it uploads your information. It literally takes 0.2 of a second to do. So just do it even if your student is not intending to stay in the state of New Jersey. Because, as I mentioned before, first warning I gave you guys, schools are moving up deadlines for financial aid forms to November 15th for early action, which I've never seen, at least not in the mass ocean scenario, tsunami, and the way they're all changing November 15th. For what reason? I have no idea other than it's not going to be good for parents. Second warning is this warning. This warning came out from the state of New Jersey in middle of August. And it says COVID notice, but it has nothing to do with health concerns. The COVID notice, I'll explain to you what it means in a moment here, just outline for you rather than reading the whole thing. The state of New Jersey has basically sent a notice out to every student who's receiving state aid here in the state of New Jersey and has indicated to them that we are guaranteeing you any money we're offering you in free money, grant money, for the fall. We are not guaranteeing you any money in the spring. And I'm talking about this year. The student's already in college right now. The state of New Jersey provides grant money all the way up to $12,000, which means in the spring, a student who has a $12,000 grant might get the $6,000 because it's covered in the fall, but might not get that money in the spring. So imagine being a student who's expecting $6,000 of grant money in the spring, and all of a sudden it doesn't show up. The reason I'm showing you this is because the state of New Jersey, in 23 years of me doing this, has never done this. Not through the economic carnage of 2006, 7, or 8, not that through the NASDAQ, internet bubble crash of 2000. This has never happened as far as I've seen. I've been working in admissions and financial aid for decades. The reason this is happening is because of budget issues. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out to parents now is because this is a second warning to not be late with financial aid forms. If you're late by a day, if you're late by a week, if you're late by a month, I can almost guarantee you schools, the state, the federal government are going to find ways not to fully fund you. Do not be late. This is the only year in 23 years I've ever said this. Fill out your financial aid forms even before you get out your admissions paperwork, which I've never said before because it's completely ridiculous. Because you can do admissions first, then you do financial aid forms. But now I'm saying do them at the same time, or at least do the financial aid forms earlier, okay? That being said, let's talk about the second financial aid forms that some of you will have to fill out, not all of you. On the screen here, you see the College Board site. You can go to collegeboard.org or collegeboard.com. They technically own both sites. Now on College Board, I put this up here for 3 reasons. First reason is this is where you fill out the CSS Profile form, the additional financial aid form I mentioned a moment ago. Some of you will have to fill out. Basically above the young lady where it says Big Future, you go 4 tabs over where it says Pay for College. So you go Get Started, Find College, Explore Careers, Pay for College. Right there where it says Pay for College, hold on one second. The person who just popped up the question about do they consider the amount of children in the household under 18? Do you mean the household size? Does FAFSA consider household size? Because the answer is yes. FAFSA does consider younger people. FAFSA considers, by the way, everyone in the household, as long as they're basically a day old, okay? That being said, that right there where it says pay for college, you click on that link and 2 things are provided to you. First thing is it provides you a list, if you want, you click on a link, a list of the colleges that require the CSS Profile form. Second thing it provides you, if you click on that, it provides you the link to go to fill out the CSS Profile form. Now, also on this page, another reason I put it on here, the third reason is above that, there's a search bar. The search bar, you type in any school's name, and then their profile pops up. On their profile, they'll have their financial aid portion of that profile, which is very important. I'm going to get back to that in a moment, but I wanted to address that here on College Boards, we can pull up schools' profiles and also look up their financial aid components as well and how generous the college is. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But first, let's talk about the CSS Profile, what it counts. The CSS Profile counts everything, by the way. It counts your car, it counts your home, it counts your retirement. It goes very in-depth. Let me give you an example. The FAFSA form is 90 to 100 questions. Very easy, straightforward kind of form. The CSS Profile is 400 starting questions, okay? And it goes up from there because colleges at the end of the CSS can ask you as many more questions as they want. The FAFSA form, you make a mistake, go back in there, easy to change. The CSS Profile, you make a mistake, it's already been submitted, you cannot make changes online. You must contact each school individually and ask them, how do you want to change this? FAFSA form is free, there's no cost. CSS Profile, $25 charge for every school that requires a CSS Profile. Now the benefit here in New Jersey is in the state of New Jersey, only 1 school out of all 80 plus colleges require you to fill out the CSS Profile in addition to the FAFSA. Stevens Institute of Technology is the only school in New Jersey that requires the FAFSA, State of New Jersey's form, the CSS Profile, as well as what's known as a process called IDocs, which is basically a verification process through the College Board as well. So Stevens requires a bunch of forms. Excuse me. And once again, do not be late with any of these. That being said, when it comes to both forms, the FAFSA and CSS, they both have save buttons. Do not rush, take your time. If you get overwhelmed, hit the save button and come back. Another question just popped up. Yes, I do help out with the financial aid forms. So if you need help with the financial aid forms, I do assist parents with the forms that need help. Once again, if you need help, Save button, or you can contact me, or you can contact the college, but do not rush through the forms, okay? Let me see here. Good question. When you're filling out the financial aid forms, let's just talk, well, they're all the same, but when you're filling out the FAFSA form, let's say you have multiple students going off to college at the same time. So let's say we have 2 kids going to college, okay? That basically means you're filling out 2 FAFSA forms. The FAFSA form is student specific, which means you have 3 IDs, 1 for each person. The parent ID, the third ID, stays the same. So the parent ID stays the same for both kids. 2 kids, 2 FAFSAs, 3 IDs, okay? Now let's talk about the first way to find out if your college is generous. It's called the net price calculator. You should all write this down. This is extremely important. The net price calculator, by the way, is now available by pretty much every college. The net price calculator is essentially a honed-in version of the expected family calculator. So the expected family calculator basically says, this is a broad number. This is what every college thinks you can pay at least. The net price calculator says, this is the number that you're expected to pay for this college. So this is how much this college is going to expect you to pay, how much you're going to get in grants and scholarships, etc. Every college now has a net price calculator, basically. They almost all of them have it now, like 99% of them have it now. Easiest way to find the net price calculators for every college you're looking at, because it's the first of the 2 ways of finding out if your college is generous, Google the name of the school and net price calculator. So you can Google Dickinson net price calculator, George Washington net price calculator, Harvard net price calculator, Rider, Seton Hall, Quinnipiac, Monmouth. They all have net price calculators now, by the way. That is the first way to find out if your college is generous specifically to you. That being said, I actually did a net price calculator just to make it easy on everyone to see how they work. Now, give me 1 second here. A bunch of questions just coming in. Is the CSS profile only for private schools? No, it is not. Private and public schools both require the CSS, but not every public school requires it. Also, not every private school requires a CSS profile either. Give an example. Quinnipiac used to require the CSS. It no longer requires it. Fairleigh Dickinson used to, many moons ago, require the CSS. It no longer requires it. So there are years where certain schools require it, and then some years where they never require it again. So being a private school does not automatically guarantee you're filling out the CSS profile form. Good question. What if my child is not certain which colleges they want to apply to? What do we do? Very simple. You fill out the financial aid forms, specifically the FAFSA at least, with all the schools they are even highly or little bit considering. And just send the FAFSA out just to at least get time-stamped. That's what I mean by time-stamped. When you send the FAFSA out, it gets time-stamped the day, the minute you send it out. It gets put on the file. The first FAFSA was submitted this day. So you can basically say, if anyone comes back and says you were late, you can say, nope, I have a FAFSA from October 3rd. I have it right here. Here's your student aid report. So you kind of cover yourself. It's the best way to do it. Okay. That being said, first thing I like about the net price calculators, and I did one for Harvard, by the way, is right off the bat on the left-hand side, you can see that pretty much every net price calculator will tell you right off the bat what that school's cost of attendance is. So it breaks down the room, the board cost, it breaks down the personal cost, the book cost, everything. So it's the first thing I like about it. Second thing, I plugged into Harvard, and by the way, these things take like 5 minutes because they only ask you about 15 questions. It's very simple. They go right to the point of the income stuff. I put into the Harvard net price calculator. I had a family of 4, 1 student going off to college, making $100,000 as a family, as parents specifically, and we had $50,000 in savings. And it came back and said that Harvard's going to give you over $60,000 in grant money. I know it says scholarships, but Harvard doesn't actually do scholarships. It's just a terminology thing here. And it basically said that Harvard's going to cost us $11,900 and change to send our student off to Harvard. Now, you're probably wondering, that's great, Ed, but we're not all going to Harvard. That being said, Harvard's just the example here. Like I mentioned before, there are many colleges that have net price calculators. Schools just as generous as this are schools like Ithaca, Gettysburg, Franklin and Marshall, Oberlin, Swarthmore, Williams, essentially every liberal arts school, to be honest with you, as well as Fairleigh Dickinson, Rider. There's tons and tons of colleges that are not at the hardest levels to get into that provide 80, 90, 100% of need the way that Harvard does. So don't just think because you're not going to Harvard doesn't mean your schools are not generous. Do the net price calculators, which is the first of the 2 ways of finding out if your colleges are generous or not. Now let's get to one of the questions that about 3 or 4 of you guys asked me about, the marital status on the financial aid forms. First, let's talk FAFSA. And when it comes to the FAFSA form, let's talk about, number one, the question on the FAFSA form, by the way, will say, what is the parent's marital status? And there's 6 answers. And these are the 6 answers. Answer number 1, married, remarried. Answer number 2, divorced or separated. Answer number 3, widowed. Answer number 4, not married. Answer number 5, not married but living together. And then answer number 6, unable to provide parents financial information. Once you indicate that you are divorced or separated, another question pops up underneath. The other question that pops up underneath will ask you, who does a student live with 51% of the time or more? When you indicate on that question that they live with, let's say, mom 51% of the time or more, what will happen is all dad's financial questions, his income questions, his asset questions, and everything in between will be erased from the form. They will not be asked of you, which obviously brings up the question, what does the separation portion of that mean? If you are separated for at least 3 months or longer in the world of college, in the world of financial aid, put it that way, you are financially divorced from each other in their eyes. Now, what makes it even more tricky, I guess more of a gray area, is you can still file taxes, married filing jointly, and be separated. This is what makes it very odd. But if you are filing taxes together, they will want to see a lease agreement, a rental statement, or a utility bill, one of those three things, showing that you guys are living at separate addresses. That being said, if you're remarried on the FAFSA, stepmom, stepdad, your stuff takes the place of the biological parent, good, bad, or indifferent, whether you've been married a day or 100 years, etc. They count the step-parent stuff. Whether you adopt a student is irrelevant. If you're married, your stuff's put on there regardless. That being said, when it comes to the CSS profile, because it's FAFSA stuff, when it comes to CSS, it's school-specific. This is what makes it difficult. Every school looks at things differently, and this is what I mean. When it looks at you from a CSS perspective, some CSS profile schools will ask both parents to fill out CSS profiles. So each one of you is filling out a form. One of you is filling out a CSS profile. The other one's filling out the non-custodial CSS profile, which means 400 questions apiece plus. Now, when it comes to the CSS profile forms, the 2 of you cannot see what each other is doing, so no one knows whose answers or what answers, so you need to be talking, you need to be discussing what you're putting down. Also, what makes things difficult, if you are remarried, both of you, that means all 4 parents' finances go on the financial aid forms, unfortunately, okay? That being said, let's go to the next slide here, which is about multiple students in college. Let me just read here. I have a bunch of questions coming in from you guys. Let me just check what you guys have. Good question. What if we have 50-50 custody? When it comes to 50-50 custody, this is the way it works. This is the way I look at it. I always say select the parent who has the lesser income and use them as a custodial parent on the financial aid forms, because it's basically they are saying to you who's the custodial parent. So I always say if it's 50-50, go with the person who makes less amount of income. Okay, let me just read a couple more sentences or a couple more questions here. Now, I did address one of the answers was, guys, if you widowed. So one of the answers is widowed. So if you are widowed, obviously, you'd only put your information in. So yes, if you're widowed, you only put your information in. You would be able to check widowed, yes. Good question. What if you have an older student living with you? Let's say you have a student who's 22 years old, 23 years old, and they've graduated college 2 years ago. Maybe they're even working. Maybe they're even doing their own taxes. Do you count them as part of the household in the FAFSA? And the answer is yes. You still count them on the FAFSA as part of the household. Up until the age of 24, you can count older students living with you, even if they've graduated college, okay? I'm gonna answer one more question here, guys, and I'm gonna move on. It's a long question, guys, just give me 1 second. Good question. How do I answer this? The question is, what happens if you've had your identity stolen, and are there going to be any issues with filling out the financial aid forms? And the answers are yes and no. And this is what I mean by yes and no. You will be able to fill out the FAFSA form. You'll be able to fill out all the forms. Let me put it that way. You're not going to have any issues filling them out. You will have a difficult time doing the iris retrieval, because if your identity's been stolen and you put any kind of freezes or holes or anything, when you try to upload your taxes from the IRS, it's probably going to stop you. So you're probably going to have to manually fill out your FAFSA form if you had any identity issues in the past, okay? That being said, let's go on to the presentation here. So I'm not going to keep you guys reading questions all day long. And by the way, I will stay at the end to answer any questions you guys have. So if I don't get your question now, I will answer it at the end. That being said, let's talk about having multiple students in school at the same time and how it helps and hurts. Now, the benefit is, believe it or not, is having multiple students in school at the same time helps tremendously. Let me give you, here's an example, basically. We have one student going off to college. Let's say the school costs $35,000, just to make the math easy. Let's say you fill out all the financial aid forms, and the financial aid forms say you can pay $20,000, which means that student has $15,000 of financial aid space available to receive assistance, receive funding. Second student comes in. Let's say the student, by the way, the students do not need to go to the same college. So, but I'm going to just say that each one goes to a $35,000 college to make the math easy. So let's say the second student comes in. So we have two kids going to college, $35,000 apiece, or $70,000 in total. Let's say you fill out all the financial aid forms, and the financial aid forms once again say that you can pay $20,000 towards the cost of college. However, you're still paying $20,000, but now it's different. You're paying $10,000 for student one and $10,000 for student two. So student one went from having $15,000 financial aid space to $25,000 financial aid space. More space available for that student to receive or be eligible for additional financial aid consideration. I've seen families that have incomes of $400,000, even $500,000 receive tens of thousands of dollars of grant money because they have enough space available based on the fact that they have multiple students in school to receive financial aid eligibility. It's a great situation to be in, okay? That being said, let's talk about frequently made errors on FAFSA form. When it comes to the FAFSA form, when it comes to all the financial aid forms, to be honest with you, and admissions forms, by the way, too, there's four basic errors that happen all the time that messes up everything. First name, last name, social, and birthday. That's the biggest error you can actually make. Getting your income wrong on here is not an error. At least it's not an error that stops the machine and basically throws red flags and says there's some kind of issue here. You have to stop the financial aid form from going through. First name, you cannot use nicknames. So if your first name is Alexandra, you cannot put Alex. You have to put Alexandra. Or Edward for Ed, that kind of scenario, you have to put Edward. Second error is the last name. If you don't know your last name, if you don't know your student's last name, and this sounds ridiculous, but this happens often. I've had families come into my office to do financial aid forms, and they don't know their last name. And this is what I mean by they don't know their last name. Were you, when you got remarried, did you change your last name legally on your Social Security card? If you didn't, then legally your last name is still the last name you had before, because on the financial aid forms, it must be the name you have on your Social Security card. For students, was your student's last name, if it was changed on the Social Security card as well? Third, the Social Security number. You have to know what your social is. You cannot guess. You cannot guess on the student social, et cetera, et cetera. Also, on the admissions paperwork, a lot of the admissions paperwork say to you that the Social Security number is optional on the admissions paperwork. It's not optional. If you are filling out financial aid forms and looking for financial assistance, you have to put your social on the admissions paperwork, because that's how they link up the social. The social from the admissions paperwork and the social from the financial aid paperwork link up. That's how they know where to send the award letters, who's getting what. So the socials have to go on the admissions and the financial aid paperwork. And the fourth error is the birthday. If you don't know your birthday, if you don't know your spouse's birthday, just ask them. They'll be annoyed for you for maybe the day, but it's better to get them annoyed for you a day than they get it wrong here. Because of the four errors, the death nail errors are the social and the birthday. Because you get those wrong, what happens is you have to do the form all over again. And when you're filling out the form for the first time, it doesn't know you're putting in the wrong social and birthday. Until you submit it, and it gets verified by the U.S. Department of Education, by the Social Security Network, then it comes back and 2 days later says something wrong. The only way of fixing that is you have to start all over again. So those are the errors you want to avoid, obviously. Now let's talk about social media landmines, which is a big topic, not just this year, but every year. When it comes to the admissions paperwork specifically, I have colleagues in admissions, and they all tell me, all of them, at every tier, that they're going on the social media pages, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the TikToks, and everything in between, Twitter, and everything else your kid has. They're going on there. These people are not going on there to like their picture. They're not going on there to comment on their picture. They're going on there to find reasons to reject your student. That's the direct, to the point, honest answer of why they're going on social media. Has nothing to do with see how talented your student is. None of that stuff. The truth is they're going on there to reject your students. Reason being is college is extremely competitive, and they need reasons to find to reject students. So, for parents, I would suggest going forward that you make your students' accounts, their social media pages, all of them, no matter what they have, private. Especially if they're posting stuff that you don't think is funny, that you might think somebody might find offensive, whatever. Because what happens is this, and by the way, you make it private until you drop them off at the college. And I'm not even joking, literally. You are driving away and they are there. Then you can make it public again. Because every 3 or 4 years, there is a news article. It happens every year, every 3 years. 20 kids were going to Harvard. 2 months before they're going to Harvard, 20 kids aren't going to Harvard. Because they posted something, they shared something, they liked something, whatever you call it, that somebody in the admissions office, somebody in the dean's office, somebody in the department they were going to didn't like, and all of a sudden their offer of acceptance was rescinded. That's why I would make it make it private until you drop them off. Now, if your student is posting stuff that you think might be controversial, not funny, offensive, whatever you want to call it, and they refuse to go private on their account, stop paying the bill. It's really that simple. Because after a day or two of not having access, they'll make everything private. But if that does not happen, I guarantee you, this year specifically, almost every admissions officer is going to find ways to reject students, and social media will be one of the biggest factors. That being said, let's talk about scams. When it comes to scams, this year I saw an explosion of scams, unfortunately. One of the biggest I saw, if you follow our Facebook page, which some of you I think already do follow our Facebook page, but I think we have like 700 followers on there. Pretty much on the Principia Facebook page, we just post new stuff coming out, where I'm going to be speaking that week, which I don't post now because everything's Zoom, so I don't want to bring other people from other schools onto the Zoom with the high schools that were like today with James Caldwell. But I also post on there scams and frauds and things I see coming up or things I see popping up because people that I help out with financial aid forums and so on and so forth, they always send me stuff and ask me, Ed, is this real? This year was probably the craziest year of scams I saw. There was one specific scam that was the Rutgers email scam, where somebody had basically manipulated the Rutgers email and looked super good. It looked just like the Rutgers email. And the email was going out. I had a dozen people send me this. It was going out on Friday. And that was already kind of a red flag for me on Friday that Rutgers was sending this out because Rutgers doesn't typically do that. And the email basically said, we need your banking information immediately in the next 48 hours or else we're basically kicking your student out. It was more polite than that, but that's basically what it said. I, within about 10 seconds, knew it was a fraud. Because number one, schools don't do this. No school, not from county to Harvard, is ever going to email you and ask you for bank routing information. So I knew it was a scam. Because the way billing offices work at every college is basically the same thing. They don't send you a warning. They don't threaten you. They don't call you. They don't email you. You never hear from them. What happens is they're passive aggressive. They send a list to the professors, typically around October 5th to the 10th, a list to every professor and says, tell each one of these students on this list, please leave the classroom, or I guess now, please leave the Zoom meeting, and go talk to financial aid before you're allowed back in the classroom. The moment that happens, they also deactivate your food key, they deactivate your room key, so you can't go back to your dorm, you can't eat, you can't do anything. That's how colleges handle, you're not going to pay, we're going to turn off everything, basically. So I knew automatically it was a scam. Now, I'm pretty sure those parents who gave the routing information, they got scared because it did it on a Friday. And do it on a Friday for a reason, because universities aren't open on Saturdays and Sundays to call up and ask about billing or financial aid stuff. So that's how they get you. So a good read or a good place to go to avoid scams is right here. It's the U.S. Department of Education homepage, studentloans.gov/resources/scams. You can see at the bottom of the slide here is the actual link where you go. It's about a 20, 25-minute read. It's very good, actually. It explains scams about scholarships, scams about loans, scams about billing, a lot of different scams out there, a lot of different, frauds that you should be able to avoid if you read this. You can also, I made a video, it's about 20 minutes long as well. So if you're more visual, you can watch the video on our YouTube channel about scams, or you can read this. But this year I'm telling parents, they should all read this. If you don't do anything more than, get a small amount of information, read this or watch our video, because There's scams popping up almost every 2 weeks. I'm seeing it's crazy. It's because of the environment, the economy, and everything else going on, unfortunately. And everybody's home and everybody's bored. That being said, let's talk about the second way to find out if college is generous or not, the ones you're looking at. On the screen here, you see the Cornell slide. And I've been doing the Cornell slide for about 20 plus years now. The reason I use Cornell, by the way, once again, college doesn't matter which college I use, is because they've always been generous. Now, Cornell costs $79,443 a year to attend. Now, let's say you fill out all the financial aid forms, and the financial aid forms say you can pay $10,000. Subtract it out. You're left with $69,443 of need. Now, Cornell meets 100% of need. So what does that mean? That means all $69,443 will be helped out with by Cornell in free money. Now, the interesting thing is Cornell is not the only school that meets 100% of need. So how do I know they meet 100%? Or I guess how would you know, because I already know. You go on to College Board. On College Board, each school has their own profile. In their profile, they have a financial aid section on that profile. And on the financial aid section shows you 3 very important numbers. First number, how much the school meets in financial need. Like Cornell meets 100%. Second number, how much the financial need is gift aid. And Cornell meets 100% of their need in gift aid, which is all free money. And the third number, it's easy enough to read for everyone and easy enough to understand, is how much does this school give out in financial assistance to every incoming freshman? So 2 ways to find out if your colleges are generous. Number 1, do the net price calculator. Number 2, look up the school's profile on College Board. That are the 2 ways that you find out if your colleges are generous or not. So what happens after you get accepted? Well, within a week or 2, you receive these. These are called the financial aid award letters. The financial aid award letters are specifically what that college is willing to offer your student if you go there in the form of scholarships, grants, loans, and work programs. This also begins the negotiation phase. Now, once again, I do have a video on negotiation, as you can see here. We've done a lot of videos actually in the last 4 months. My wife was basically telling me that, you're not doing anything, just make the videos that you've been telling guidance you're gonna be doing for 7 years. So now all the videos are on YouTube. This video also will be on YouTube, by the way, after I edit out a couple pieces in the beginning and the end, as far as me just asking you guys, when to be starting off and that kind of stuff. But that being said, we do have a video on YouTube about appealing specifically. It's 30 minutes long for a reason. And let me explain to you why we have a video. It's 30 minutes long. It's actually the longest video we have other than the presentations for this reason. If someone tells you to appeal no matter what, I guarantee you that person has never worked in a college, because it's not what you do. You do not randomly appeal a financial aid award letter. It's not the way it works. It's terrible advice. And I'm talking about 23 years of experience. That's probably the worst thing anyone can tell you is you always appeal. There's 2 types of appeals. Let me tell you that right now. There's the admissions appeal, scholarship money. There's the financial aid appeal, the grant money. The scholarship money, you always appeal. But once again, 2 different departments, so really 50% of the time you always appeal, not 100% of the time you always appeal. So the admissions office, and this is how you appeal with the admissions office. Let's say school A, where your student really wants to go, has offered you a $10,000 scholarship. School B here, maybe the safety school, maybe the target school, has offered you a $20,000 scholarship, i.e. the safety school that told you can now leverage with. You go back to school number 1, school A, the school you really want to go to. You let them know this is where you want to go, school choice. Thank you guys for the $10,000, but we want to make you aware this other school is giving us $20,000 in scholarship money. Is there any way you can match the number? And that's exactly the way you say it, by the way. Is there any way you can match the number? 3 things will happen. Number 1, school matches the number. Perfect. We got everything we wanted. Number 2, school comes back and says we can't match the number, but we can go halfway and meet you and give you $15,000 of scholarship funding. At which point you say, thank you for the $15,000, but can we meet in the middle at $17,500? This is why you never start off with a number. You wait for them to say something first, then you come back. Third thing, no, we're not going to negotiate. We don't negotiate. We're not going to give you more money. We're done. 3 things happen if you negotiate a grant with the financial aid office. Number 1, they give you more money. Perfect. Number 2, they don't give you more money. Also perfect. Number 3, they take away all your money. Not so perfect. The financial aid office, if you appeal a grant, can take away a portion or take away all your grant money. I have seen families that were told to appeal under terrible advice. They have lost 15, 20. I saw one family lost $30,000 in grant money that was already guaranteed. was taken away. And this is why. If you don't work in a college, you would never understand this. When you fill out your financial aid forms, it goes through a giant computer. Okay, it's called a Central Processing Center. That's the FAFSA. That giant computer will finish calculating your stuff in a tenth of a second. Then it takes all the information you have and holds it in basically a database. Then the colleges go out, grab that database information, if you put their name on the FAFSA, and pull it into their database. So basically you go from one machine to another machine, no human being contact whatsoever. There's no such thing as a human being, by the way, calculating your financial aid forms the first time. It just doesn't happen. It's not the way it works. However, if you do an appeal, that's exactly what happens. If you do an appeal, you bring a human being in. And a human being was going to look at stuff a lot differently than a machine. And also, the machine only gets to look at you for one tax year for seniors. It looks at you for 2019 taxes. The human being, if you're doing an appeal, wants 2019 taxes and 2020 taxes. So in any one of these 2 years, if there's something that you forgot to say, that could be the catalyst to lose your financial aid. Like in 2019, maybe you didn't have any interest, you didn't have any capital gains, you didn't sell anything, you didn't have any dividends. So you forgot or you undervalued your stocks, your checking, your savings, your bonds. Then in 2020, you went crazy and started selling everything, or you got a whole bunch of dividend paying stocks. And now this person's looking at you wondering, you guys said you had almost no cash, no savings, you had no money on 2019 taxes, but all of a sudden you have a lot of dividends, interest, capital gains, etc. Or you have a rental property, and for some reason you didn't rent it in 2019, so they couldn't see it. And all of a sudden in 2020, you did rent it. And all of a sudden Schedule E shows up and shows rental income, where it's located, depreciation, repairs, and everything else, i.e. loss of financial assistance. So that's why the video, by the way, is 30 minutes long. I don't just do it on there because I like to talk, okay? That being said, if you're going to appeal and you're uncertain, just watch the video. I literally go through every scenario of why I would and would not appeal and what's going to happen if you do appeal or if you don't appeal. So if you want more insight, just watch the video. That being said, for families that have had a financial situation happen this year, i.e. drop of income, loss of job, full-time work to part-time work, furloughed, all the stuff together, this is the new threshold of appeal. If you have a 20% drop in your income from 2019 to 2020, then across the board, I'm probably saying, yes, you appeal. This is what I mean. You made $100,000 in adjusted gross in 2019. You made $75,000 or less, so basically 25%, or let's say $80,000 or less in 2020 taxes, then I'm probably appealing because of the fact that it's such a big drop in income that I'm going to appeal and ask for more financial aid consideration. If you're in a gray area where you have certain factors or investments or that kind of thing and you're not certain, just watch the video. Once again, it's 30 minutes, yes, but 30 minutes for a reason. That being said, let's talk about loans. Now, there's 3 types of loans out there. There's federal loans, state loans, and private loans. For those who are wondering, we have like 3 slides left and we're done. When it comes to loans, the federal loans are the first loans everyone's going to get accustomed to hearing first, because the minute you fill out the FAFSA form, your student is eligible or essentially provided a federal entitlement loan called the Federal Direct Loan, also known as a Stafford loan, or was known as a Stafford loan. That loan is $5,500 in the student's name. It's paid back 6 months after they graduate over a 10 to 20-year repayment term. Loan is in the student's name only, and the reason it's given to you is just because you filled out the FAFSA form. The second loan you're all going to get accustomed to hearing is called the Parent Plus loan. The Parent Plus loan, I like it for a few reasons. Number 1, it lets you take out as much money as you need. Number 2, it provides the lowest credit requirement of any of the lenders. You need a credit score roughly around 610, 620, and you're eligible for it. Third reason I like it is due to the fact they lowered their interest rate. Now, the reason I don't like it, their interest rate, even though it was lowered, is now 5.8%. So still pretty expensive in the environment we find ourselves in. Second reason I don't like it, unfortunately, it's got a 4.25% origination fee, which means for every $10,000 in loans that you need, you must pay them a $425 fee, which means if you took out 50 grand, you're paying almost $2,400 in fees, which is insane for a 5.8% loan. Second loan I like, I guess in order. So first loan is the Parent Plus loan. The second loan I like a little bit more is the NJ Class loan, which is the New Jersey loan. The NJ Class loan has interest rates in the 4s, so it's better, but it also has an origination fee, so I'm paying them fees as well. The third level of loans is the best loan. It's the private loans. The private loans were the best last year. The private loans are the best this year. The private loans will be the best for the next 2 years because of the financial environment as far as low interest rates we find ourselves in. Private loans right now are starting at 1.24%. There's nothing that low. There's just nothing that low out there. Now, the benefit of that is you already know who the best lenders are, I guess the private side. If you need loan help, for senior parents watching tonight, if you email me in June, I create a list of the top 5 lenders. I just email it to whoever wants it. So I basically just put in order. This has got the best rate and the best terms. This is the second one. This is the third. And I just email it to whoever wants the list. So if you want the lender list, just email me in June. I just send it to whoever wants it because it's easier. Because everyone calls and emails me and asks me for help with loans, which is just a waste of my time and your time. I just say, here's the top 5. Just go shop around. There's nothing I'm going to do. There's no magic I will do to help you get a better rate. It's all credit-based. But if you need the loans, I just send you the list of the loans. It's very easy. I create it every year because I know all the lenders anyways because we go all the same conferences. So I know typically before they even come out with the rates in mid-June, I already know who's going to be the top 5 anyways. That being said, here is our newsletter. If you want a newsletter, email me. Once again, I'm going to give you contact information in 2 slides. On the newsletter, we talk about everything. We talk about admission stuff, financial aid stuff, testing, everything. We basically talk about what you need to be doing that specific month. It's grade level specific, by the way. That's why I need you, if you email me, to tell me what grade level your student is in. Scholarships. There's 3 levels of scholarships, by the way. The biggest level, or I guess the best level, is the college scholarships. And once again, you go through the admissions office to find out information about that. That's the key for financial assistance, by the way. You want to lock in as much scholarship money as possible. That is the golden ticket to reducing aid across the 4-year time frame. Second level of scholarships is the online stuff, the stuff that goes, the more competition stuff, basically. The FastWeb and the FinAids. These are the 2 largest scholarship searches in the world. These are the 2 I like the most. They are bigger and incorporate Scholly, CapEx, College Board, Hunch, Raptor. All of them are basically incorporated by these guys. So that's why I tell parents all the time, scholarships.com is great, merit8.com is great, but these 2 are free and they incorporate everybody. So these are the 2 I like the most. The third level is a local high school. I'm checking with guidance if I'm a parent of the high school here to find out when the local scholarships are going out because that list provides the least competition for scholarship funding. Here are the resources we talked about here tonight. FAFSA is only a resource right now for senior parents. Juniors and below should not be going on there. College Board is a resource for everyone, also where you fill out the CSS Profile. And scholarship searches, once again, you do not pay for scholarship searches. For me, it's a waste of money if you're paying for scholarship searches. In some cases, it's a scam because of the fact that you can get all the stuff for free on these 2 sites. That being said, we do have a YouTube channel. If you follow our YouTube channel, once again, I just posted today the early action, early decision effect of applying that way on financial aid. So it's about a 15-minute video, 16-minute video. My wife is telling me 17 minutes. She obviously knows better than I do. She's also telling me to tell you guys to watch and subscribe and to like the videos. I don't know how this stuff really works. I just make the videos, by the way. But if you guys want to help us out, help our organization for doing these videos for you guys, just go on YouTube, like the videos, and just leave comments. You can just leave any comment. You can leave the weather. It doesn't matter to me what you guys leave. It's just my wife says commenting helps. I don't know what that actually means. But if you guys want to help us, for doing the videos and everything else and doing the presentations, please like the videos, please subscribe to the videos, and please write some comment on the videos. Other than that, here is my contact information. Now, when it comes to contacting me, if you need help, if you have questions, if you have concerns about things, easiest way to reach me, this is my cell phone number, believe it or not. Easiest way to reach me is number 1, text message. Number 2, email. And number 3, phone call. Now, text messages, I am about a day and a half behind. I should get back to 0 text messages, I believe, tonight around 1 in the morning, because I have right now 109 text messages just from today, by the way. So I'll just show you here. Ed has 109 text messages just from 11 a.m. today. So I go through all my text messages first, by the way. Then I answer all my emails. Then I have not answered my phone, by the way, in 5 days. So this is what typically happens. I answer all my voicemails in the morning. I mean answer, I listen to them. Then I send those people a text message saying, if you need help or you have a question, text me here. Half the people text me their question there. The other half people call me the next day. I am not answering my phone. I can't answer my phone. I deal with 10 clients a day, and I do presentations every night. Some nights I do 2 presentations at 6 o'clock and at 8 o'clock some nights. It's impossible. I am not going to call you back. I'm pretty sure you have questions and you have concerns, you need assistance. If that's fine, just text me. It's the easiest way to get back to you because I just do not have time. I did pick up the phone today for somebody who had a 5-minute question. It was a 50-minute phone call. So I am not answering phones until the end of the month, by the way. That being said, the only time I answer the phone is if my wife calls me, because obviously she's staring at me right now, as well as if it's a guidance counselor, which typically I know most of their numbers. So when they call, I'm answering the phone. But other than that, text me. It's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Other than that, thank you guys for watching.